Yep. Mr. Clerk, time is 7 p.m. I'm going to call this council meeting to order. Town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Kim, Councillor Gallo, and could I also get a motion to an amendment to allow for the added delegations? So we need 2/3 majority for that. Councillor Gilland, Councillor Weiss, any comments or questions? So this is on the amendment. I need 2/3. I'll call the vote. Not working. Board vote.
Board vote has been requested for the amendment to the approval of the agenda, requesting that the additional delegations be added. Requires 2/3 support. Councillor Gardner, how do you vote? Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Weiss? Councillor Weiss votes yes. Councillor Gallo? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Kim? Councillor Kim votes yes. Councillor Gilland? Councillor Gilland votes yes. Mayor Marcus?
Yes.
Mayor Marcus votes yes. And Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Motion carries.
Back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Weiss?
Through you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, looking at the number of delegates that we have and the importance of the single motion, I'm going to assume that a lot of people hear about the Councillor Gallo's motion. I wonder if we can move the motion forward and up higher to respect the time of the delegates and the people in the gallery.
Yep, when we get there, we'll do that. Thank you. Call the vote. Board vote.
Board vote has been requested for the approval of the agenda. Mayor Marcus, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Marcus votes yes. Councillor Gallo? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Weiss?
Yes.
Councillor Weiss votes yes. Councillor Gilland? Councillor Gilland votes yes. Councillor Gardner? Councillor Gardner votes yes. Councillor Kim? Councillor Kim votes yes. And Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Motion carries.
Q, any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no community presentations, delegations. We have 11. First up, Rosie Mandla regarding item 9.1. Rosie? Welcome. I just get you to state your name, the municipality you live in, and you have 5 minutes.
My name is Rosie Mandla, and I live in the town of Aurora. Dear Mayor, councillors, and my fellow neighbors, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I am here to express my deep disappointment and strong opposition to Councillor Gallo's motion to revisit 14452 Yonge Street as a location for the men's shelter. After years of extensive public debate, thorough resident feedback regarding the suitability of this site, and a democratic vote rejecting this proposal in February 2024, I find it concerning that this motion is now being introduced without consulting the very residents it impacts. To provide context, this proposal was brought to a recent council on short notice at a time when the mayor who sits on York Region Housing Committee was known to be absent. Such a move undermines public trust in both our political process and the integrity of this council. When York Region first presented this site, Councillor Gallo, I recall your disappointment with their failure to consult and address the residents, the very people that you and the fellow councillors were elected to represent. Tonight, I share in that disappointment, but this time with you and this motion. Over the past 2 years, this site has been thoroughly considered for a men's shelter. We know that it sits beside a sewage pumping station, is bordered by busy train tracks, and sits on environmentally protected land. None of these facts have changed. If anything, the site's suitability has only gotten worse as reforesting is in progress. I trust York Region continues to assess alternative locations, as they have publicly stated. And what you yourself once termed, they are finally coming up with a plan B and hopefully a plan C and D as well. You once stated, Councillor Gallo, and quite passionately I may add, I quote, "I've said this to anyone who's contacted me on both sides, that my overwhelming issue is the sewage station. And I've repeated this over and over. Nothing would be built there. You wouldn't put a Belinda's place there, it would have been a non-starter. You wouldn't put a youth center there, it would have been a non-starter. You wouldn't put any type of residential there. No developer would ever build any residential near that pumping station. Why would we put men there that are in need?" End quote. Here we are, 1 year later, and you have a change in heart without presenting any relevant new information. I respectfully point out that suggesting that these men face a stark choice between the cold and a bad location is misleading. There are other options. I also question how much has been done in advance to advance genuine alternatives, like repurposing existing buildings before bringing this motion forward. From my perspective, this motion appears to be little more than political posturing. The residents of this town deserve consistency and decisions grounded in good policy, not contradictory proposals to ignore previously voiced concerns. Especially in light of the recent statement made by York Regional Council, saying that regional staff have no authority to consider this once proposed site or to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal, I urge you, Councillor Gallo, to withdraw this motion, as further deliberation will not change the outcome of this decision. At a time when our community needs unity and smart leadership to deal with the uncertainty we face from south of the border, advancing this motion only creates division. Show respect for the democratic decisions already made, the transparent public process we strive to uphold, and the trust residents place in your leadership. Allow York Region to complete its thorough site assessment to identify a truly suitable location for this important project. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I hold the thought, people, please? Next up, I have, actually, Council, sorry. Can I get a motion to receive the delegate and refer it? Councillor Thompson, second, or Councillor Weiss. Any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, call the vote. Carries. Next up, we have Mike Zelyony, resident, regarding item 9.1. Mike. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, the municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Mike Zelyony, a resident of Aurora. I really struggled with what to say here today. There's a lot I want to say to Gallo, to everybody. But I want to lead with compassion. I want to lead with understanding. I want to lead with the fact that every single person in this room is struggling with something. Relationships, finances. Some know someone that's homeless. Serious issues. I think we have an opportunity here where we can work together and find a location that makes sense, that'll get approved, and that'll be the right location for the people that'll be living there. I don't know if people here are aware, but about 2 months ago, York Region made a statement. They are no longer considering 14452 Yonge Street. That wasn't good enough. People kept pushing. And I don't know if you're aware, but about an hour ago, York Region, senior staff and council put out another public statement in lieu of this motion that's coming forward, knowing what the vote is probably going to be. And they said very clearly in that statement that is very new, that not only are they not considering this location, they don't have the authority anymore. They're going to follow through with their plans to look at what their study is going to come up with, and they're going to go from there. This community has been put through a lot. It's enough. We've had enough. It's gone through a democratic process and it failed. They are not bringing this back. Let's work together and find a proper location. Councillor Gallo, I urge you to withdraw your motion. Can I have my slide kindly, please? Your motion is actually contravening rule number 15 of the Code of Conduct of Members of Council, where it states clearly, members of council should not actively undermine the implementation of council's decision. The role of elected officials, once a council decision is made, is to support the implementation of that decision, not work against its implementation, publicly or behind the scenes. Council's decisions are arrived at following discussion, debate, and reflecting the democratic process. Members are expected to engage in the debate with their fellow council members through the democratic process of government. However, once council has made its decisions, members must recognize that decisions as a duly considered decision of the body of council. As members of that body of council, individual members, those who did not agree with the decision are not to engage in the activities that seek to challenge or undermine that decision. Members can express disagreement with council's decisions, but it is contrary to the ethical behavior of members of council to actively seek to undermine, challenge, or work against council's decisions. Can I have the next slide, please? Also, as a resident of Aurora, I want to say something. Homelessness is a problem in York Region. In Aurora, I'd like to reflect to you there. That's the number of homeless people that York Region has counted, including encampments. When you want to solve a problem, the first step is identifying that a problem exists. There is a problem, but not in Aurora. If Aurora did have 100 homeless, which it has less than 5, would Richmond Hill be putting up a homeless shelter? They'd laugh you out of chambers. Let's work together. Let's find a suitable location and let's help homeless people and stop wasting our time and stop playing around with this community. We've had enough. Enough. It's
Please,
time to take your ball and go home.
please. Council, okay, get a motion to receive and refer. Motion to receive and refer. Councillor Gallo, thank you. Councillor Kim, any questions for the delegate? Call vote. That carries. Next up, 6.3, Zhiying. I get that correct? I apologize if I didn't. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, the municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Zhiying Huang, and I hold a bachelor degree in urban planning from University of Montreal. So today I would like to express my perspective through my study and experience on why 14452 Yonge Street remains an unsuitable location for a shelter. Urban planning is not just about placing buildings on the map. It's about people, sustainability, and responsible decision-making. It requires us to think ahead, consider social integration, and make informed choices that benefit the most vulnerable while respecting the broader community. The first and the most important things that I learned from planning is that the space must serve the people who use them. A shelter's success depends on its accessibility, safety, and the ability to foster social reintegration. And the site is isolated, surrounded by a woodland and a pump station, with no nearby public space or community hub, which provide a vulnerable individual a chance to connect back to the society, as well as rebuild a sense of belongings. Also, transit service and pedestrian assets are also extremely limited. A shelter must be in a place where residents can easily access jobs, healthcare, and social support service, resources that are essential for reintegration. The site is also located next to an active railway track. Many individuals experiencing homelessness also struggle with mental health challenge. Placing them in an area with increased risk of accidents or harm is not a responsible choice. So are we truly acting with care and responsibility by putting vulnerable individuals into an unsafe and disconnected location? I believe the answer is no. And planning is also about thinking ahead, not just for today, but for the next 5, 10, and more years to come. Concerns such as what's the actual budget for making this location viable? What essential infrastructure is planned to support the individual connect back to the society and rebuild their lives? How will staff and service provider commute daily to a poorly connected site? I believe a poorly chosen location may lead to a waste of funds and operation efficiency. If we truly care about the effective solution for those people in need to help, we need to invest in sites that are already equipped to help people rather than insisting a ill-fitting options. We are here today because of a motion to reconsider this location. But I ask, what has changed since the initial rejection? Has there been any public consultation or workshop with the resident and key stakeholders to identify better solution or address the previous concern? Before concluding, there's no other option exists, but the community giving an update on research progress or York region's effort to address homelessness. What research or comparative analysis have been done to justify bringing this location back for consideration? Last December, Aurora residents came to help, including me in this room, expected to receive updates on tangible solutions to address homelessness. Instead of providing clear, evidence-based progress, the conversation focused on urgency, the cold weather, and the lack of available shelter. Yet, from what I read, according to YorkRegion.com article published in July 2024, the York Region took concrete steps for rapid deployment actions to address homelessness, including adding beds to existing shelter and working on an alternative solution. If we want to make productive and informed decisions, why weren't these developments shared transparently so we could properly review the progress? Where were these additional beds placed? What are the better strategies have emerged? How we can integrate these new ideas into future consideration to ensure a more effective and sustainable approach. Instead, that night we are left with the only conclusion: there's no other viable options. So I would like to ask what work has been done to address the serious concern raised last year? What solution has been provided? What are those justifications? I think if we are thinking to making the best choice for those people in help. If we truly care about vulnerable individual, we should place them in a location where they have real chance to rebuild their life, not in an isolated, unsafe, and inaccessible area. If we truly respect the community, we should listen to the residents and work together to find a better solution rather than insisting a seat that already been rejected. If we truly believe in sustainability, we must make thoughtful, responsible decisions, one that our future generation can look back on with pride. So for those reasons, I urge you not to approve the reconsideration of 1445 Yonge Street as a shelter site. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Kim. Any questions for the delegate? Call the vote. That carries. Next, 6.4, Harbinder Thandi, resident regarding item 9.1. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, the municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Harbinder Thandi. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
I can just get the municipality you reside in,
I'm sorry,
municipality you reside in.
in Aurora.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we are again. Seems to be a very crafty way of playing chess. I don't even know if we're here about a shelter anymore. I don't know exactly what we're here about this day and age. Like the talk of the shelter, it was voted. There wasn't sufficient evidence from York Region. There were no other sites. There was a democratic process, and the votes were taken into consideration, and the location was voted down the last time we were all here. That was back in 2024. Mr. John Gallo, so Councillor John Gallo, we listened to your voice. You inspired a lot of us, actually. You actually made some of the most valid comments towards York Region about the reason why you're voting against the shelter. We talked about non-optimal locations the last time we were here. We talked about a variety of things, how between a sewage pumping station and a railway track, it's not where we should put our most vulnerable. But I can't help feel that we're not here today anything to do with the shelter or its location. It seems like there's people that have more political aspirations, and that's the reason why we're here today. Maybe something to do with the mayor and the way he's voted on certain things in the past that you're not happy with. Can I get a raise of hands of people that actually live in Aurora?
Harbinder, I just get you to the chair, please, to the chair.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I saw a lot of hands. I noticed I didn't see Miss Gallo's, Miss Gilliland's hand up there. I was wondering.
I call you out of order.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, councillors. I'm very frustrated.
Can I, Harbinder, can I just get you to apologize to council, please?
I apologize, Skillland. I just strongly feel after some of the posts that I've seen on social media.
No, I'm not going to allow it.
Okay.
Continue with continue with the comments in regards to the motion.
Okay. In regards to the motion, we all know that it's a non-optimal location. We know that this is not the place where York Region has an appetite to bring this back. And I don't understand why you're playing with the emotions of members of the public, members of Aurora, and especially all the other councillors. We have to be here tonight to speak to you about this again and again. And I hope this is the last time. Guys, please make the right decision. I ask Councillor Gallo to rescind this motion. Thank you.
Okay, can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Gallo, thank you. Councillor Kim, any questions for the delegate? I'll call the vote. That carries. I'm just going to remind everyone, any criticizing of any member of this council or any member of staff without any factual information, I will cut off the mic. Okay, moving forward. Next, we have Marc, Faria, resident regarding item 9.1. And they are joining us via, they're not on right now. Okay, so we'll move forward and we'll come back if they come on. Next, I have Kimberley McLean, resident regarding item 0.91. Welcome. I can just get you to state your name, the municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes, ma'am. Kimberley, you can also throw the mic down like that. Yeah.
McLean, I'm a 32-year resident of Aurora. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to speak in support of Councillor Gallo's motion to move forward with inviting the region back to the table regarding the location for a highly needed emergency and transitional facility for men. Councillor Gallo, I respect someone who can examine information and change their mind for compassionate needs. This motion is both helpful and productive. I would even go so far as to say I'd like to see the region given immediate approval to move forward. I'm incredibly disappointed with a Facebook post I saw regarding this motion last Friday. I don't agree with the assertion that the region would not reconsider if barriers were removed. In September, it was indicated by the region as a location being no longer on the table, with the understanding that Aurora would not give approval. We now know if approvals were given by Aurora, this would still be their #1 choice of location for one of the facilities on their plan across the entire region. They're now looking at 3 facilities across the region. Over the past several years, regional emergency and transitional housing needs have been addressed primarily by Newmarket, followed by East Gwillimbury and Richmond Hill. Aurora has put forth nothing, in spite of its commitment to do so. We expected and deserved a result. The last emergency housing approved by Aurora was Yellow Brick House in 1978, 47 years ago. To some of us, 1978 feels not too long ago, but it's 2 generations ago. Aurora has not done its share. These posts also indicated that it's a waste of time for councillors and residents and the region to reopen this discussion. Assisting unhoused people is not a waste of time. Enough time has already been wasted scuttling this amazing opportunity. I'm shocked our councillors and other leaders would be called out on social media, saying these are empty political gestures for someone to pat themselves on the back while accomplishing nothing. I've heard this a few times, and it feels very disrespectful to our councillors. The location in Aurora is the best location at this time for one of the 3 needed facilities in this region. Looking for locations across the region should include Aurora, not just anywhere but Aurora. We as a compassionate society charged with taking care of each other can't wait any longer. I also know the town has been contacted by quite a number of residents in favor of this location, not just against. There are hundreds of supporters. I'm sure names, phone numbers, and emails can be supplied. There's simply no conceivable physical reason that this is not an appropriate location. Fear is not a reason. Mayor, when you met in person with a fellow resident and I, nearly a year ago, you told us your only reason for voting against this location was density. She and I were very new to this whole process, and we asked you some fairly pointed questions, and you gave us answers. But as per the town's own plan, special needs housing can be exempted. To me, that means the final barrier can be removed and this emergency situation can begin to be resolved. There are many projects in our town that I believe to be excellent, but we're always missing the beginning of the continuum for housing. It's part of our own town's plan. How much longer will we have to wait when there's a very viable option available? As an advocate for unhoused and vulnerable people, I cannot simply move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson, I guess only this side's going to move them. Any questions? Call the vote. That carries. 6.7, Jordan Drodge, resident, regarding item 9.1. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, the municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes.
Guess that's it. Good evening. My name is Jordan Drodge. I'm a lifelong multi-generational resident of Aurora, and I live at 98 Richardson Drive with my wife, Stephanie Derry, who unfortunately can't be here tonight. I'm here to speak in support of Councillor Gallo's motion to have York Region resubmit the application for the Men's Emergency and Transitional Shelter at 14452 Yonge Street. I've been following this issue for some time now, listening to and observing the concerns of the residents and their reasoning for denying this application. While all valid points, there is one simple and persistent fact that needs to be brought to light, and that is the guys who rely on these shelters, these people, really are at the end of their rope. And desperate people do desperate things. And if we as a community do not do something to help them, and soon, there's a very real danger that some of them will turn into the very monsters some of you are claiming them to be. Having said that, the vast majority of them have simply fallen on hard times and are only interested in their survival, with nowhere else to turn. Benjamin Franklin famously advised Philadelphians in 1735, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. He wrote this in the Pennsylvania Gazette to encourage people to prepare for and prevent fires by being careful when moving hot coals, cleaning chimneys regularly, and forming a fire department. The saying means it is better to stop something bad from happening than to deal with it after it has happened. Excuse me. When I was going through arguably the most difficult period of my life, many, many kind and generous people offered their assistance in any way that they could. I did not realize at the time, while I was going through it, the sheer magnitude of my problems, and that there was really no way out of my predicament without assistance from other people. But of all the help I received, there was one person who believed in my full recovery was possible and chose to stand by me through absolutely everything. One person who, against all odds, decided to stick by my side and gave me the love, support, inspiration, and hope that I needed to make the full recovery I have successfully accomplished today. That person is none other than my wife, Stephanie. Shortly after I returned home from the life-changing car accident, we were discussing what we were going to do We had been dating just before the accident occurred, and we're talking about our long-term plans together. I didn't want to be a burden to such a bright, beautiful young woman just starting out in her career. So I told her I would understand if she wanted to leave, as I didn't want her to feel trapped in a relationship, having to provide care for me. What happened next gave me all the motivation I needed to stand up and fight for my health. Stephanie turned to me and said, "Whatever it takes, just get better. Please promise me you will do whatever it takes to heal." With a cheerleader like Stephanie, how could I resist and say no? What I see here tonight is not just a simple decision whether to build yet another building, but of one that would inspire a community spirit. We aren't just deciding on whether to approve another 55 units of housing, but rather we are deciding whether or not the men that will live in those units are worth helping in their time of need. We are also deciding,
Mr. Drodge, can I get you to wrap up, please?
we are also deciding on the fate of an ever-growing community of caring individuals who clearly believe they can make a difference and have a desire to help these people. Please do the right thing and allow this motion to carry so these kind, compassionate, and generous people can do what they do best. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive and refer? Councillor Reese, seconder. Councillor Gardner. Any questions for the delegate? All the vote. That carries. Next, we have 6.8, Adam Mobbs regarding item 9.1. Let me just get you to state your name, municipality that you reside in, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Adam Mobbs. I'm a resident of Aurora and founder of Aurora Cares Housing for All. I don't have time today in the 5 minutes to correct all the misinformation out there, though I have printed copies of a Q&A provided by York Region, which addresses many of the comments brought forward today and other comments brought forward by the community. Many people in our country are struggling. We see them struggling around us. We see them keep walking, and we tell our kids to often do the same. We sometimes pretend they don't exist, but they do. They exist here in Aurora. I see them because I choose to see them. People in trouble can rebuild themselves with some help, some real help that sets them up to rejoin their communities with both dignity and pride. This is the intent of the proposal that first came to you in 2021. You heard right, for everyone here, 2021. Council, including the mayor and now Ward 4 councillor, appeared supportive at the time. That's why we're here today. Since 2021, a lot has changed and nothing has changed. The numbers of those experiencing homelessness have dramatically increased, yet supports available have largely remained the same. The mayor, perhaps the biggest champion of the project, hosted 3 public information panels and is on record for being an advocate for housing at 14452 Yonge Street. Now, he is not. I was proud of his leadership in 2021. Today, I'm not. Pumping station was in the plan in 2021, still is today. Like then, bears no impact on the quality of life for residents in the area. None. I didn't realize it back in 2021, but the tide would turn quickly on what council thought was right. 2023, 2 years later, some residents brought forward concerns of safety, security, property values, and proximity to the LCBO. I, along with other members of Aurora Cares, we were shocked. This is not the spirit of the community, not of our community, not one with the tagline, "You're in good company." Does "your" in this tagline include those who have fallen on tough times? Shortly after that meeting, I was pleased to learn the Ontario Human Rights Commission stepped in and wrote to council. If you check their website, they don't do this very often. They wrote, and I quote, "These fears are not a legal basis upon which the town can make zoning or planning decisions." And they further stated that they are concerned that denying or delaying approval of this project may create barriers to housing and may also be discriminatory. I challenge those who oppose this project. Are these still the fears that motivate you today? Following this letter in mid-2023, Mayor Maracus asked York Region Council to pass a resolution blocking any potential appeals. In his media release, he stated, "I've always been a fierce advocate for municipalities' authority and local land use planning decisions. Firmly believe that local planning matters should be resolved via the local municipalities' planning processes, and regional entities should refrain from intervening." Mr. Mayor, I hope you're still a fierce advocate for local authority after the vote today, even if you're in the minority. Almost a year after the commission stepped in, the application was denied. The official reason written was that the proposal did not conform to the town official plan OPA 34. This was the first time in more than 4 years of planning, preparation, and over 1.2 million in financial investments. This reason was noted, and it was only noted in the last 11 minutes of a 6-hour meeting. The last 11 minutes. Is that democracy? By now, 1,022 days had passed since first presented to council. No debate, no room for questions, nothing. All councillors had already spoken twice by the time this reason was brought up. They're not allowed to speak a third time. Does this feel right? Do we not deserve more? Fast forward a few months later, then council passed unanimously a motion to explore other properties in Aurora. A member of Aurora Cares Housing for All submitted a Freedom of Information request to the region to understand the nature of conversations taking place. It appears both town staff, thank you, Doug, and region staff were working well together. There was great momentum. This suddenly stopped in August 2024. Then the mayor was consulted. All conversations stopped at exactly August 13th, after the mayor met with the regional chairman. No further progress or working together happened after this point. There's no documentation to demonstrate a single meeting took place. None. The motion was till the end of December. Former Mayor Tim Jones recently spoke publicly regarding the application.
Mr. Moss, can I get you to wrap up, please?
He supports Aurora Cares, as does former Mayor Daw. Mayor Jones reminded us that once upon a time, a very localized community opposed both the Yellow Brick House and Belinda's Place. Today, those organizations are changing lives and building stronger community. The motion in front of you tonight is to invite York Region back. That's it. Just invite them back. I'm encouraging York Region's listening. Lisa Gonzalez,
Mr. Moss, I really do need you to finish up.
Of Community and Health Services, spoke about this last week. The region is open to considering any site supported by local municipalities for the purpose of this. That includes this site. It's on the table. I should note the mayor has a different point of view. I wanted to
Mr.
point out
Mobbs, I'm going to cut off the mic. You're way past 5 minutes. This is council, not public planning. This is council,
I'll
not
ask for
public
council to
planning.
let me speak.
Can I get a motion to receive and refer the delegate? Councillor Kim, seconder. We just want to receive it. We got a seconder? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Call the vote. Councillor Gillen. That carries. Next, we have 6.9, Mr. Steve Fleck, regarding item 9.1. I'll just remind everyone, we have strict rules. This is council, 5 minutes. Mr. Fleck,
Mayor
If-
Maracus,
if I can just get you to state your name and.
my name is
Sorry.
Steve Fleck. I've lived in Aurora for over 20 years. Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council and fellow citizens of Aurora in the gallery, thank you for your time tonight. Here we are 1 year on from the last public meeting on the men's transitional housing facility. At that last public meeting, when this Aurora Council, by a vote of 4-3, denied the zoning changes required for the facility proposal to move forward, there was raucous and loud cheering from those opposed to this project, like they had just won the Stanley Cup. However, there were no winners that night, not for Aurora, and certainly not for the homeless and unhoused in Aurora and the greater York region. As I walked home, I live just around the corner. As I walked home from that pivotal public meeting a year ago on a cold winter's night at 1 a.m. in the morning, I actually encountered a homeless man on a bicycle 2 blocks away from here, from Aurora Town Hall. I thought it rather ironic and cruel that in the warm and comfortable confines of this chamber, his fate and the possibility of finding a warm place to sleep that night with professional help available to him on site to help him get his life back in order had been denied. So again, here we are, a year on in time. For what it's worth, 1.2 million or 1.2 million, as Adam just updated us on, invested in this project already, and we've not moved forward not 1 centimeter. Meanwhile, the general crisis in housing and homelessness in York Region and Aurora becomes worse by the month. Mayor Marcus, you yourself have said in the past that this facility is desperately needed and that you want to build housing for all in Aurora. Where is our individual and collective political leadership and will on this issue? Where is the urgency amongst our community, elected officials, and civil servants? If not at 14452 Yonge Street, for whatever reasons, then where will this facility be built? Shrugging our shoulders and hoping the problem just disappears and goes away will not help anyone. Again, Mayor Marcus, members of council, my fellow citizens of Aurora, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive and refer. Councilor Thompson, Councilor Reese. Any questions? Just have one comment, Mr. Fleck. Thank you for your comment. I did say that in a suitable location that meets our OP and zoning. So thank you very much. Call the vote. That carries. Next, 6.10, Mr. Roy Cohen regarding item 9.1. Welcome. I can just get you to state your name, municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Roy Cohen, a longtime Aurora resident. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and esteemed council, senior staff. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on this very sensitive and very dramatic issue. I've made some points, and I'm going to use some catchphrases tonight. One is baby steps, the other one is trust, and the third one is emotion. When this proposition came to Aurora, the first location that was presented was the old Howard Johnson Hotel on Yonge Street. And after much deliberation, a lot of investigation, it was deemed not suitable. And does council remember why it wasn't deemed suitable? Because it was in front of a park. Yes, you can laugh all you want, but that was the reason. They didn't want children exposed.
What's the point of order?
Park, Mr. Mayor, I don't know where the residents.
The Hojo's is not next to a park?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're speaking of the Hojo's?
Correct.
I sincerely apologize. It is adjoining.
Apology accepted.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Cohen.
So they moved on. And the lands that they're speaking of now have already been spoken for. We went through this close to 25 years ago when the OP was introduced. And that was 2 units an acre. When Brookfield and Ballymore came in and put their application in, they bought those lands and they transferred density, the 2 units an acre. Nothing should have been built on them. 0. They needed infrastructure, so the sewage station was built, but nothing else was supposed to be there. And it was the same thing with Del Manor. It was zoned institutional for a school, not for an old folks residence or a senior's residence. My apologies. The town purchased the lands beside the pumping station several months after the decision was made not to proceed with the shelter. They're in the design phase now of putting together a park trail, a park that will integrate the 293 homes that Brookfield built right beside the proposed shelter. That I find is very underhanded and not fair, because if you would ask one of those residents if they would come back and buy a home there if the shelter was built first, we polled them. Every single one of them said no. Why? Because yes, they do have angsts. They do have issues with safety and property values and, you know, allowing their kids to ride their bikes through that trail or walk their dogs. They do have fear. And fear isn't a bad thing. But what I'm finding here tonight is that nobody ever said the word monster. Nobody demeaned the homeless or the mentally ill or the drug addiction that transcends everybody else's life, because we've all experienced something. What we need to do is come together as a community, as a unit, to find the right solution. For years, I gave my heart and soul to this community and the sporting community. And I found one thing that always resonated. When you had a captain of a team or a coach of a team, there was always a respect and a decorum, whether you liked them or not. So when I look at this situation in its totality, it needs to be shared. There should be some sort of intermunicipal collaboration where we're speaking to all the other municipalities and working towards finding a greater solution. And we can do it, but we need to do it properly. It's not fair for one ward, one group of residents that don't want it in their ward. Call them whatever you want. Say whatever you want. They just don't want it. You were elected by us, and you have a fiduciary duty to make sure that we're in a good place. Thank you.
I get a motion to receive and refer. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson. Any questions? I'll call the vote. That carries. Next, we have 6.11, Mr. Len Bulmer regarding item 9.1. Welcome. If I can just get you to state your name, your municipality you reside in, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Len Bulmer. I am a resident of the town of Aurora for I don't know how many decades now, but at any rate, I'm going to tell you something tonight that I've never said before in public. I think I have voted in every election that I am eligible to vote in, because I'm like one of those weirdos who actually believes your voice matters. And the thing I'm going to tell you that I've never told anyone is in public. I am going to tell you that I voted for the leadership in this room. I've never told anybody before how I've ever voted. Not even my wife often. But I'm going to tell you, what did I vote for? I voted for collegiality. I did not vote for somebody to attack a colleague in media before this meeting. I didn't vote for that. Why would I vote for that? To say, and it doesn't matter which side of the issue I'm on, by the way, although I am on one side. But I expect the people I vote for, the leader I vote for, to be respectful. I expect them to treat their colleagues with dignity. Didn't see that happen. And unfortunately, you see, part of what's happening here is through leadership action or inaction or bad action, what we are seeing is that the issue is being removed somewhat from what it really actually is. Like, we need that men's transitional shelter. We don't need the bad behavior that leadership has exhibited around it. Now, there's just a couple things that I want to say. Okay, firstly, I've heard, oh my God, this guy's not being consistent. He said this and then he said that. Well, I witnessed a process where the leader I voted for was part of a regional process for 2 years, is on the public record. Hell, I've seen the videos supporting the project. And yet his inconsistency is allowed, but his inconsistency isn't. Well, come on, please. But the one thing I want to say in the end is this. I've been in this community a long time. And I think that this community can have cultural centers and transitional housing projects. Because I think leadership that doesn't encompass the whole spectrum of the community is leadership that is only getting half the job done. And I want leadership that gets all the job done. Thank you.
I get a motion to receive and refer. Councillor Reese, Councillor Thompson, any questions? Call the vote. That carries. Council, I'll move to the consent agenda. Any items that anyone wants pulled? Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion to receive. Councillor Thompson.
7.10 to be voted on separately.
Okay. Can we get 7.10 separate? So can I get a motion to approve 7.1 to 7.9? Councillor Weiss, Councillor Kim, any comments or questions on that one? Call the vote. Carries. 7.10. Mover. Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, just that it had been referenced in some of the delegates speaking that this is the letter that was provided to council today from York Region. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Call the vote. That carries. Move to committee of the whole. Any items that anyone wants pulled? Councillor Gardner.
You.
Anything else?
8.5.1.
I'm assuming this is all new information.
Beg your pardon?
I'm assuming this is all new information from committee of the whole.
Yes.
Okay. I did watch the meeting. Any other items to be pulled? I get a motion to approve all remaining items minus 8.3.2 as well as 8.5.1. Oh, Councillor Reese?
Yeah, 8.3.1, please.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that's new information as well?
Yes.
Thank
it's for
you.
new information.
So again, I got a motion to approve all remaining items in the committee of the whole meeting report of February 11th minus 8.3.1, 8.3.2, and 8.5.1. Councillor Kim, Councillor Thompson. Call vote. That carries. Wanted 9.1 ahead, is that correct? So, Councillor Gallo, this is your motion. Would you like to move it? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Weiss, Councillor Gallo, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't usually prepare a written statement, but in this case, I wanted to make sure I captured all my thoughts. But before I read that, I did want to address one thing in case for those of you who believe that my actions are politically motivated and have written so, I think you should all give your heads a shake, because a year ago I upset half of you. And tonight I'm upsetting the other half. Any political advisor would be, obviously saying you're an idiot and you're not a very good politician. But I hope that underlines my sincerity both a year ago and tonight. And that has nothing to do with politics and has everything to do with trying my very best to do the right thing. I would like to express my thoughts on an important issue that has been the subject of much debate and consideration over the past few years. As many of you will recall, I previously voted against the selected site for this shelter. My decision at the time was not based on a lack of support for the initiative itself, but rather concerns over the suitability of the proposed location. I was clear in my deliberations that I did not agree with the concerns of the residents in the area as a reason to deny the application. My vote was intended to send a message to find another location. My internal struggle was clear at the table on February 13th, 2024, when I said, I feel like I'm forced to make a decision, even though there's an overwhelming need and no alternative. I proposed an alternative site at that meeting with no real traction. Like many in our community, I had hoped that a more appropriate site could be identified. However, after a year of discussion and exploration, no viable alternative site has come forward. Meanwhile, the urgent need for transitional housing in and outside our community has not diminished. Every day that passes without action is another day that some of our most vulnerable residents remain without safe and stable shelter. I am well aware that my actions 1 year ago has delayed the provision of safe and stable shelter for our most vulnerable. I cannot change that decision. I truly felt I was doing the right thing. Given these realities, I have taken the time to reconsider my position. Leadership requires us to adapt when circumstances demand it. While the proposed location may not be ideal, the greater priority must be ensuring that those in need have access to support and services. A shelter is not just a place to sleep. It is a foundation for rebuilding lives, fostering stability, and helping individuals regain their independence. I recognize that concerns remain, and I remain committed to working with residents, staff, and support agencies to ensure the shelter is integrated into the community responsibly and effectively. If we move forward, we must do so with thoughtful planning, strong oversight, and ongoing dialogue to address any challenges that arise. At its core, this is a matter of compassion, responsibility, and community well-being. I can no longer allow the search for perfect to become the enemy of what's right. And so with that in mind, I'm prepared to support this initiative and help ensure that it succeeds in its mission to provide a safe, temporary home for those who need it most. Should the resolution pass, it will be up to the regional municipality of York to resubmit the application and have it come before council for further deliberation and a final vote. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If I don't see a button, I'm going to call a vote. Yeah, now they all get there. Yeah. Councillor Reese, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I also want to thank Councillor Gallo for his suggestion tonight and what he's said to the put in public, because it's very important. I respect your courage in bringing this back, and thank you for it. My opinion, nor my vote, hasn't changed, and in fact, it has grown as we've seen the growing need for this over the last year for transitional housing, and people talking about a shelter. This is transitional housing because there are services that are there to help people get back their dignity. This motion tests our principles of equity and inclusion. Our town has embraced inclusion, yet for some reason we are considering excluding vulnerable men who need both shelter and assistance in returning to work and to regain their dignity. I ask my council members and colleagues to consider this exclusion message we send if this motion for the region to bring this back is not passed. And I saw the letter that came forward, and I actually thank the legal counsel for the region for doing that. In there, it said that they had no authority, and they had no authority because we didn't give them authority to bring this back. They haven't considered this yet. In a report that the region put out, I think 2 months ago, they noticed that 14452 was underdeveloped. So that suggests to me that there is an opportunity for that one. However, they've also said that they are looking for 2 to 3 other ones in this region. And all I'm suggesting is that we ought to be one of those people, one of those councils, one of those municipalities who stand up and say, yes, in my backyard. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you to everyone for coming out tonight and for sharing your thoughts on this issue. It is my understanding that for the region, the primary focus is not just on identifying a solution specifically for Aurora, but rather on securing the most effective and sustainable solution for emergency and transitional housing across the entire region. As part of this strategy, region staff have initiated an extensive region-wide site selection process. They are currently assessing a broad range of potential sites, all aimed at addressing the pressing and recognized need for emergency and transitional housing. Once this evaluation is complete and viable sites have been identified, York Region will collaborate with local municipalities and key stakeholders to ensure that the development of this facility aligns with both local planning policies and the community's input. This process has been ongoing for some time, and we anticipate a report will be presented to Regional Council soon, as early as April or as late as June. Therefore, I believe it's prudent to allow the region to complete the thorough work they have already begun. Let them determine the most appropriate site, whether in Aurora, East Gwillimbury, Markham, Vaughan, or any of the other 9 municipalities in our region. It is important that we respect their evidence-based approach in the site selection process. Once their findings are presented, if we find reason to disagree with their conclusions, we will have an opportunity for dialogue. At that point, we can voice our concerns, discuss potential issues, and/or propose alternative solutions. With that in mind, I will not be supporting the motion this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you. I don't have a prepared speech at all for this. I'm just really speaking from the heart, listening to everybody come up and say their opinion and how they're feeling. And I really want to thank all the people in the room today for sharing their compassion and their heart in support of this much needed housing. And I also want to thank some of the individuals who came up to reiterate some of the misinformation out there and handing out those flyers. I think it is really helpful. And it is important to note that this particular piece of property is already zoned residential, cluster residential. So it is appropriate for houses. And I don't want to go down that road again and opening up all the reasons why I think this is good. I think it's been already reiterated already. But I also wanted to mention there was some talk about Howard Johnson, and I just want to say there was no formal report and nor were there any applications submitted for this. So, you know, this is all hearsay information. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Also, I have to say, I am really disappointed that there's some people in the community that have said they've had enough. That really just resonated with me because I say the humans that don't have a home or a roof over their heads, they don't have enough. They need our help. They need our compassion. They need our support. They need services to help them get off their feet. And you know, people have this vision of what a homeless person is supposed to look like. Addiction problems, unshowered or unkempt, on the streets, not really looking very well presented. But the reality is, homeless people could be your coworker down the hall. Could be a nurse, a contractor, or someone's a general contractor or a construction worker. We've heard the stories of people living in their van, working full time, but they don't have a home. And this is a resource that we as a community can provide to lift these people up and give them a new start with the basic needs of shelter. This discussion has been going on, yes, for nearly 7 years about the need in our communities of York Region. So when I hear someone say baby steps, that's a lot of baby steps. We should really be moving forward and allowing the region to take their time to decide if this is appropriate. We're just throwing it out there. Come on back. We haven't seen anything else being presented in the last year. I'd like to open that up again. Thank you.
You, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I'd like to thank Councillors Gallo, Gilland, and Weiss for expressing the crux of the issue and all of the accompanying points far better than I could. I agree with them. And I would like to say, though, to the resident who said there are only 5 homeless people in Aurora. I've met 5 homeless people at the Metro Shopping Center. And I'd like to say that they were all very receptive to a conversation, you know, fairly well dressed. And actually, I enjoyed speaking to them because it's very clear that we have a large homeless population in Aurora. And maybe you don't see it, and maybe I don't see it, but I know from the police, public health, various agencies, it's there, and people in the neighborhoods have told me it's there. So that is comment to the fact that we have 5 homeless people. In response to something that was said at the very first meeting, I do not see the lady in the audience, but perhaps Councillor Gallo was swayed for her, thinking it might be an inappropriate place. And the comment was about the pumping station. And she got up and she said, it stinks, stinks, stinks. I live very close to that pumping station. It does not stink. And I have never had any residents come forward to complain. So certainly in that way, it's not an inappropriate site. If this does come back from the region, I would ask a few things. I would like to know what the alternative sites were that they looked at. And I would like to know why they were turned down. I would like to know if they're going to follow the prototype that Durham Region has for its new transitional shelter that has addressed everything over 50 meetings that the community and politicians could think of that would be problems and how they were to be solved and expected and solved if required. I really, my fellow councillors have spoken beautifully. And the one thing that nobody has said is that, or perhaps Councillor Gallo did say it, but there was a motion from this council to find 3 alternative viable sites in Aurora. And the motion said that our town staff should do this in collaboration with the region. And as Councillor said, I think it was 8 months later, no, maybe 10 months later, we hadn't heard anything. And Councillor Gallo verified it at our last meeting in 2024. So I think it's a fair motion, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, the resident, Mr. Bulmer, hit it well in his tone and his words, and because I agree wholeheartedly in his perspective in that, you know, it's very unfortunate that this issue has divided Aurorans. You know, when I moved here many years ago, I took great pride in that we were one. We're a small community, but we are one. Regardless of issues, we can overcome those issues. That fellow Aurorans would pass judgment on others merely on this one issue is very disappointing. That if one is not in favor of this location, that you are an unethical and immoral person. Now, some have approached me and said that I'm not a good Christian. Well, that would impose that Christians have to market for compassion and goodwill, and no one else does. I would submit to you that there's probably other people of other faiths and atheists alike who are just as compassionate, if not more. Let me say that I'm not against the men's transitional shelter, but the process and how we got here by the region is certainly not desirable. You know, I've spoken with the region and charitable organizations about having a location for housing for those who've been sex slaves and human trafficked. But I can tell you that when those locations are looked at, no one, absolutely no one wants them in their neighborhood, because the Johns will come and they will try to end their lives. I can tell you very few people are going to be supportive of that type of housing. It's unfortunate. Now, you know, going back to the issue is, I hope that whatever conclusion is or outcome occurs today or a couple months from now, I hope that we can all come back as one. Now, given the region's communication today, it seems like the logical roadmap is to hear what they have to say. So for those reasons, I'm not going to comment further, but for now, I'm not for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Are there any other comments or questions? Well, everyone, thank you for coming out. Obviously, everyone's very passionate on both sides about this issue. But let me begin by stating that regardless of the outcome of this motion, no form of housing should be or will be developed on this site, as this site has been identified as a strategic location for current and future infrastructure needs, as well as municipal servicing that will support housing growth in Southwest Aurora. This location was determined to be unsuitable 2 years ago, remained unsuitable a year ago, and continues to be unsuitable today. Nothing about the location has changed. The motion does nothing but create false hope for the vocal few who are fixated on this site, to the exclusion of the consideration of any more suitable sites, while causing frustration for the majority of the community that expect site selection to be a fact-based decision. The Office of the Regional Solicitor and General Counsel has reviewed the motion before us and has provided a statement, which is on tonight's agenda, which states in part, regional staff have no authority to consider the former proposed site at 14452 Yonge Street. Per the direction of Regional Counsel, regional staff have moved on in the process, undertaking a comprehensive region-wide evidence-based process to identify multiple potential sites across the region, assess their suitability using clear criteria, and rank the best sites via site selection matrix. This process serves to select an optimal location for shelter and transitional housing, one that aligns with the local official plan and zoning requirements, ensuring the quickest path forward to build much needed supportive housing for our most vulnerable community members. Now I will continue collaborating with my regional council colleagues on finding the best location for supportive housing and anticipate the forthcoming staff report to regional council expected in Q2, which will identify the most appropriate sites within our region. For these reasons, I am voting against this motion, as it is neither helpful nor productive. What I will say, though, is that I find it truly disappointing, and I think Councillor Kim touched on it, that some individuals have taken a stance that anyone opposing this unsuitable location is opposed to helping the marginalized in our community or addressing the rising homelessness issue across the province. It is both untrue and deeply offensive. As I've said many times before, the best decisions for our community are based on facts, not emotions. I will continue to work with my regional colleagues to make evidence-based decisions and look forward to approving optimal locations that provide the best service to those in need, as well as to the surrounding community, because that is how you get things done and get them done right. Councillor Gallo, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Excuse me, just a second.
Excuse me, everyone.
Let's
Okay,
finish this, please.
Councillor Gallo, speak, please.
Some decorum, please. I think just some clarity around a few issues. One, the letter that was received today by the Office of the Regional Solicitor and General Counsel. There is nothing new in that letter. We already know everything that's in there. And anyone suggesting that the region communicating through this letter that they're not interested in this site is not reading what I'm reading. That's clear to me. And the reason why it's important, to Councillor Thompson's point and Mr. Mayor, your point, the reason why the motion tonight is important. And I'm glad the region sent this letter, because without the motion tonight, the region absolutely will not be looking at this location. So to suggest that, why don't we wait until they figure out all the sites and then make a decision, they're not going to look at this site unless this motion passes tonight. So if you're interested in a thorough investigation of all sites that are on the table for York Region, you should be voting in favor of this. Give them an opportunity to review this and other sites thoroughly, and then we can make a final decision. If there's a more appropriate site that's even quicker, I'll be the first one to put up my hand. I have no issues with that. But to deny this motion tonight sends a clear message to York Region, not that you want to fulfill a full process in finding all suitable locations, but you just don't want this one. Find another site. What I don't want is the door closed. What if there are no other sites and we're waiting even longer? That's what I don't want. That's the purpose of this motion, is to open up the door and have a fulsome discussion on the best location for this facility, including 14452 Yonge Street. Denying this will remove it from the list, and who knows how long it'll take. So I'm in support of this. To suggest that the region is not going to look at it, you're absolutely right. If we deny this tonight, they will not look at this site. So why would we do that? I'm not in favor of that.
Any other comments, questions? Call the vote. That carries. So we'll move to 8.3.1. This is sport plan update. Councillor Weiss, do you want to move this? Thank you. Seconder. I'm just going to continue with the meeting. I need a seconder. I need a seconder. Councillor Thompson. Go ahead, Councillor Weiss. You pulled this?
Here, but I assume this is a sport plan update.
It is. You pulled it.
Thank you. Yeah, the reason I pulled this has to do with a number of items that I had over the last week. There was an AGM for Sport Aurora where we gathered a number of bits of information that I wanted to share from their standpoint, and probably through you to Mrs. McDougall, because the sport plan, of course, is her responsibility.
No, continue, please. Go ahead, Councillor.
So through you to Mrs. McDougall, while if we can hear, if you have any questions about it, please do so. The item that came forward to us was a question about the survey itself and the wording of the survey. And the survey had had mention of the sport landscape. And I asked the members, the 43 sport organization members, about what a sport landscape was. And they really couldn't tell me what sport landscape was. So I have a question about the validity of that survey when that kind of thing happens with people. And I counted in the room, there were over 300 years of sport administration and experience with that group of people. So I trust their judgment on this and sport landscape question. So my question to Ms. McDougall, if she wouldn't mind telling me a little bit, because I assume that she was working with a consultant on the survey itself, what the sport landscape means in the context of what we've seen in the report. So through you to Ms. McDougall.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly through the survey results and through the surveying and consultation phases, I do want to make sure it's clear. There were multiple different engagement opportunities, some of which were public-facing general public inquiries. Others were very pointed and directed to the local sport organizations, those that would have a better understanding of what the sport landscape looks like here in Aurora, understanding where supports can come from and what the town support could look like. And that is where the distinction is between the two different engagement opportunities. So there was a public survey that anyone on the community could answer, whether you actually belong with an organization or not. And those questions were here. The actual questions with regards to sport landscape or sport council were only raised at the directed LSO meetings. Those that again had sport knowledge, sport organizational structure, hierarchy knowledge, as well understanding how the town supports could support them. And it was only during those sessions that conversation was risen, and therefore it was only LSO's feedback that provided the genesis about moving forward with regards to that component of the previous sport plan recommendations.
Thank you. So again, my question is, what is in a sport landscape in terms of what you felt was in the survey and what you think and your department thinks is in the survey? Because I will tell you a little bit about the positioning of sport from the previous sport plan, I was involved in. They were of the opinion that the sport landscape is how many residents and what age cohorts are involved in sport. I don't see any of that in this report. What's the investment in sport in Aurora? I don't know what that means particularly. Is that an investment of the town? Is that investment of sponsors, which are both important? Is that investment of time? What's the value of the volunteer hours? I didn't see anything in here that said that any of these sport organizations said we had X number of volunteers that provide X number of hours annually, and a qualification of what the value of that, even if it's at minimum wage. How are the varying support programs increasing sport participation? I see some information in here about the value of sport participation, and we want to increase that participation. But I didn't see anything in here about how that will be done or could be done. What is the annual value of partnerships and sponsorships? We talked about sustainability in here, and sport organizations live with sustainability every day of their lives. They're out there trying to do the things that they need to do in order to gather participants, put volunteers on the field, and pay their bills, particularly the permitting bills. And then what is the economic impact of sport tourism in Aurora? When we talk about sport tourism, and I see sport tourism is in here, but what it says that it's somehow focused on DEI. You have DEI in the middle. So I'm really interested in your response to how sport tourism and the development of sport tourism is somehow focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, which I absolutely agree with. We have to do something about that, but sport organizations know that as well. So I know that's a lot, but I'm asking you about where is the data, the metrics from our consultant that says, here's the lay of the land and the sport landscape right now, because whatever we approve and whatever you do should be compared against that base. And I just don't see it. And if you have that, I'd be happy to hear from you on it. So through you, Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as this was a sport plan update, the consultants were consulting with the various organizations, gaining information from them about what their needs were. It wasn't about necessarily a data collection initiative. It was about hearing them out, about learning from the organizations today compared to 2016, what their needs were, and subsequently resulting in the action and recommendations of what's in the plan itself. It wasn't about necessarily digging into the data of our gender matrix, our residency matrix. That was not part of the process. The process was to look at the priorities that each organization felt they needed help with, they needed support with. And subsequently, that is what is resulting in this SWOT analysis, and certainly in the end recommendations. There are actionable items under each of those recommendations. Each one will result in a plan to come forward and how that will be implemented, and certainly how that will be collected as far as data goes, the progress moving forward. So it wasn't about the initial data and understanding necessarily each individual organization's makeup. It was what their board of director representations said their need and help was, whether it was in diversity, whether it was in volunteer recruitment, whether it was in recognition needs, whatever that was how it was summarized in this report going forward, and resulted in the recommendations, what their needs were.
Okay.
Councillor.
Yeah, I'll have just a little bit more time. So what I also want to bring up was about the survey themselves, and they were concerned that there were only 268 in many of those. Could you have the data on who made up this cohort of 268? How many of them were residents? How many of them were participants? Because the sport organization said to me, well, why didn't they just send it to us and we would have distributed it to thousands of parents and thousands to get the information back, because they doubted the validity of the information because it may not come from an expert source. So is that data available, where the surveys were distributed, how they were distributed through you, Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the survey was presented or issued to the public on Engage Aurora. Certainly anyone in the public could speak to it. That's where the 268 came from. Some sport organizations may have taken that and shifted it forward to their membership. But being that the questions in that were more about general participation in sport, what are the interests in the community? What sports does your family participate in? And what supports would you, as a community member, see in improving sport in Aurora? Separate to that was the discussion and questions that were directed to the sports organizations. We couldn't just take the sport organizations questionnaire and give it to the public. There'd be some content of that they wouldn't understand and therefore be very invalid. We needed to hone in on the LSOs and what supported them directly for sport support. So the data, to your question, do we have that data for the 268? Yes, I can certainly share that with council and provide that. But keeping in mind, that is the general population of the Aurora and who would enter and support or provide that data information.
Councillor, you have 5.
Yes, thank you. I'll cede the floor to
Councillor
my
Gardner?
councillors.
Thank you. And I just find it interesting that the 5 municipalities that were looked at for best practices were far larger than Aurora. It's a comment. If you want to respond, you can, but these are larger municipalities with certainly a lot more staff and services available and possibly money. So I would have liked to have been compared to other communities our size.
I believe, through Mr. Mayor, I believe the consultant did answer that question a couple of weeks ago with regards to the rationale. I believe the intent was looking at different municipalities that are in support of sport and had success. And subsequently, we were learning from them and their ways of doing their business and how a municipality could support sport in their local community.
Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I remember that answer and understand it, but the thing is, maybe those communities were successful because of their size and their tax base and just their ability to have enough staff and wherewithal to deliver the services. So I would have liked it to also, if not entirely, also to have been compared to places like Newmarket. Thank you.
Gallo?
Thank you. This is where obviously at council and we're being asked to endorse the recommendations that are in the sports plan. But I listened to Councillor Weiss and I consider him an expert in the field. And I think we should all rely on each other when we're experts in particular fields to try to listen and make sure that that particular councillor is satisfied with what's before us. And I get the sense, and I don't want to put any words in his mouth, that he's not necessarily satisfied with this. So I don't know whether or not a referral or a deferral, because if we don't, well, it's going to get passed tonight. So I'm happy to support that if there are outstanding questions, and if there is no urgency for tonight, if we can wait another cycle, I'm happy to make sure everyone is satisfied.
Councillor Weiss, second time.
Thank you. Yes, and I too am concerned about the concept of endorsing this, because endorsing something means that we think it's right, we think it's accurate, and we want the staff to go forward and spend both their time and money on doing it. I'm disappointed that we don't have any KPIs or objectives in here, because the previous sport plan had all those in there. And they were checkboxes that said, yes, we got this done, we got this done. And I have that checkbox right here. And I went through it significantly. So I think we need a deeper dive on this. And I'd like the consultant to consider the specific needs of the people that the sport plan is being delivered to and for, which are the sport organizations. And I'd like to split this so that we can certainly receive the report, but I'd like to propose an amendment that this is deferred to the next cycle, and that the consultants and the staff come back with another report that has the information that I've suggested and other people have suggested. So that's my motion, is to split it and to have number 2 from an amendment that this is referred back to staff for a report at a further time. Thank you.
You seconder. Mr. Gallo. Any? Yep. Any comments on the referral? Councillor Gallo.
Through Mr. Mayor, can I just hear from staff on the urgency and if that's an appropriate approach?
Senator
Through you, Mr. Mayor, referral would be fine. I just would like some clarity of exactly what details and information we're to seek from the consultant. So just some clarity on the questions you've asked. An email would be fine. Just something so I know what I'm directing staff to pursue. I've taken my own notes, but I just want to make sure we're not missing anything.
Councillors.
Oh, sorry.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Yep. Yep. Referred. Yeah. Call the vote. Councillor Garner. Councillor Garner's yes. That carries. 8.3.2, Councillor Garner, you pulled this one. Do you want to move it? You don't want to move the summary. Councillor Gallo, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Gilliland. Yeah. Councillor Garner, go ahead.
Thank you. There, going over, there are several things that are not included in the costing for the square. One would be we're looking at the cost to the taxpayer. So one would be the HST, which was about $900,000. And that was not, we had to pay that. And there was no mention of when we took money out of the reserves for the square, what the lost or the potential lost interest could have been of those funds. The land adjoining was mentioned, and although it wasn't part of the construction of the square, it was definitely purchased because of the square. And there are other costs that have to do more than the 7.5 million, and it was in closed session. Hopefully it will be released at some point, but there was also HST there. There was a preliminary review. Of course, we had to do a site condition of the buildings. So, and there were a couple of other things, studies that had to be done. So I think that we need to have all of that information. I think the public needs to have all of that information, because at the end of the day, that is what the square costs them. So I'd like to have an addendum to the report or a memo placed on our next council cycle that will look at all of those things. I don't know if anybody has anything else to address, but we are looking for transparency as to what it cost.
Absolutely, Councillor. Mr. Mayor, Van Kessel, what was the total cost of the square construction? I believe the report states it, but go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the total cost of the square is included in the report, and which also includes any of the non-recoverable HST.
Thank you.
The HST we recover from the federal and provincial government does not get included in any capital projects.
Thank you. So we're being very transparent. Thank you.
Excuse me, through Mr. Mayor, we're talking about the construction costs. Is that what you just said?
The entire cost of the squares has been stated
that includes
in the report.
That includes the HST that wasn't recoverable?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel? Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's correct. All our capital projects include non-recoverable HST.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with respect to the land purchase, as I said, we wouldn't have purchased it if it wasn't for the square. I'd like to have the true costs on that. Maybe I have to make a motion or somebody has to make a motion to release that report in order to discuss it.
Councilor Gardner, Ms. McDougall, go ahead.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I'm understanding specifically what you're asking about, is the Yonge Street properties, that property
Yes.
north of the town square.
Yes.
That is a separate project to this.
I
that you're
understand
reporting
that.
out?
I understand that, but it did cost the taxpayers money.
Yes, but it's got nothing to do with.
And
leverage
if I
or
could, and
construction.
if we could release the pink, it would be very clear in the pink.
And that's
that-
a separate thing, separate from this.
Okay, so we'll discuss it separately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Reese.
Yes, thank you. My question had to do with the line right underneath the Capital Budget Authority that consistent with this project's approved debt financing strategy, the $4 million Parks and Recreation Development Charges funding will be financed through a 20-year debenture. So the question that came to me from someone, and I wasn't here when all of this got started, so I apologize, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I just wonder if that it followed our debt policy and notice of the debt for the debenture, because I noticed that there's a 5-month period or something where people are to be apprised of that, and I wasn't around. So if you could help me with that, I'd appreciate through you to either Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel or perhaps Ms. McDougall.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the original debt on this began at the August 2020 meeting. That preceded the actual debt policy, which didn't come about until 2023, but it does align with it. So it doesn't follow it because the debt policy came afterwards, but it does align with the policy.
Okay, good answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor Gardner, second time?
I don't know if my question through you, Mr. Mayor, was answered about I guess it's lost opportunity of interest. The money that we took out of the reserves, which we put into the square, which before that we were gaining interest on.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that would happen with any capital project that we build. When we spend money and we pull the funds from reserve, it means that the funds are not there to gain additional interest. One of the things that we look at more carefully is when it comes to asset management work, because that's where the interest really helps us deal with our longer term asset management needs. And this was more of a growth project. It wasn't pulling as much from asset management because there was a limited amount of asset management work that did take part of this project. There was some, and that came from asset management works, but we don't talk about lost interest or future interest when we're deciding to build new projects.
Councilor.
Thank you. And there was money taken from what used to be called the gas tax reserve. And I read the protocol, and yes, you can use it for new structures, but the primary, very publicly, the primary use for it was to repair our roads. It was for infrastructure. And as we know, we're very short on repair and replacement money for infrastructure. So maybe I have to leave it at that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Gallo.
I don't want to prolong this, but I just my 2 cents in terms of capturing loss of interest. We do that when we're here making a decision whether to use reserves versus outside funding sources, borrowing money. And in fact, we did do that. And we asked staff to do that whenever we're trying to make that decision, whether we use our internal resources versus in our reserves versus borrowing the money. In this case, I agree with Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel that I don't know how you would capture a loss of the use of the funds from the reserve fund if we're not comparing it to anything else. It's just the normal course of of business, sure, we could calculate that, but what value would that give us? If it's making a decision whether to use that versus borrow money, then it's very valuable information to compare the two and make appropriate decision. In this case, it wouldn't make sense.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call the vote. Councillor Weiss. Councillor Weiss, yes. That carries. 8.5.1. Councillor Gardner, you pulled this. Did you want to move it?
You pulled it.
Councillor Gardner pulled it. Do you want to move it?
I pulled.
Yes. Did you want to move it?
No.
Someone would like to move it. Councillor Weiss, seconder. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you asked me not to repeat myself. I will do my best. So looking at the report again, last time we discussed this, I was thinking this was geared towards low income, affordable housing. Low income is included in my mind with affordable income. But the report says it's for the median household for the region, I believe. Sorry, that's wrong, mid-range for the region. I don't have mid-range for the region, but I have median household income. You would have to earn almost $32,000 net to be able just for housing. And to me, that it's just not worth it for, we've got 600 and 550 rental units. By the way, the median, what they say is median is 80,000 to 150,000. So certainly somebody making $80,000 is not going to be able to afford this. So I'm not sure who we're aiming this at. But I will say, I would like to compare this rent for 2-bedroom to a rent that my daughter pays in Toronto, what her building charges for a 1-bedroom. Before I do that, through Mr. Mayor and Mr. Marino, do you have an idea what the average size would be for a 1-bedroom unit? And I know you have the plans for one of the proposals.
Mr. Romano.
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. So on, I believe it's the Metcalfe property, we actually do have a site plan. So we do have details on unit breakdown. And that project has 600 total units that was approved. And out of the 600 units, just again quickly here on a breakdown, 47% of those units are 1-bedrooms, 4% are studios, 41% are 2-bedroom, and there's 8% of those are 3-bedroom units.
Councillor.
Through Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Mayor, are they giving you the size of the units?
Yeah. So you, Mr. Mayor, and again, the 1-bedroom unit sizes range again from 440 square feet up to 440 square feet to 600 square feet.
Okay, so
Councillor.
I'm going to present some figures that would be probably right in between those two. So for I can have an apartment for 505 square feet. And let me see where my note is, excuse me. And I can pay $2,280 for that at Yonge and Eglinton. Not an affordable building. It's got a pool. I'm 4 blocks from the subway, and I'm surrounded by a complete community with grocery stores and restaurants. And where this building is placed, well, you'd almost have to have a car to get to a grocery store. At least you wouldn't be able to walk. So for a place 542 square feet, I only have to pay $2,310 per month. I think this is an outrageous rent to be charged, which is, I just really can't see this as affordable housing. The average rent is, I think, $2,643. So I'm trying to compare apples and apples. We don't have any apples to compare with this in Aurora. We have nothing else. We will have the Tower Hill project, but I don't know that that's going to be affordable in any way. So the $3 million that we will lose on this, that we will have to put back in our DC reserve, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mrs. William that's an amount that any rental would be if they have a 3-bedroom apartment. Not this amount, but a similar amount.
Ms. Mayor, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in the legislation, depending on the mix of units, there is discounts that's defined. And those would have to be replaced with other sources of funding, and that's legislated in the Act.
Councillor?
Thank you. So the amount minus that is 15,597,000. So let's call it 15.5 million. You know, you did say that we would be able to borrow against that, but that money will not hold the same value over the 20 years because of inflation. And these builders are only required to keep this as, in quotes, affordable for 20 years. And after the 20-year period, they can do whatever they want with it. In the meantime, I think that we will not be being fair to our Aurora taxpayers by doing this. I do know that rental is important. The region has been trying to do this in any way it can. I have a booklet from 2005. Rental housing is important, but I don't think we can call this affordable. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. You know, I support the intent of the initiative, which is to help increase the supply of rental housing, but I struggle with some of the details, you know, that Councillor Gardner brought to light and what's in our report. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mrs. Wainwright, Fine Kessel, Table 1. My interpretation is that in response to getting a interest-free deferral of their DCs, that Table 1 outlines what the 1-bedroom rent would be in these units, equal to or less than. And so the York Region policy says 2644. So through you, Mr. Mayor, is that the interpretation that in response to receiving the interest-free deferral, that the rent for these 1-bedroom units would be at a max at 2644?
Mayor Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Thank you. And that's the challenge I'm having, because, you know, in prior days, we would do developments and, you know, if they wanted to go higher than what was allowed, we would talk about community benefits or bonusing, or, you know, we would look at it from the perspective of what's the value to the community. And so, you know, I tried looking at different websites to just try and get a sense of what is the average 1-bedroom price. I pulled up the Toronto Real Estate Boards. This is Q3 2024, and for York Region is $24.70 is the average rent. Everywhere else I looked in terms of the data that's out there told me that the average 1-bedroom rent in York Region is actually less than the 2644 that's showing in their report. And this is where I'm struggling to understand what's the benefit to the community. The developer is getting an interest-free deferral of their payments, but the chances are that's the rent they were going to charge anyways, the 2644 or less. If you go by what the marketplace data that's out there and available would say, is that the average rent is $2,500 for a one-bedroom apartment. So, you know, perhaps again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, what is the benefit the community is getting as a result of this?
Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I guess a couple different ways to look at it, and I think I'll, refer to the treasurer to speak to some of the financials, but it's a regional incentive program, and it's not primarily just an incentive to achieve affordability. It's really an incentive to achieve more rental housing stock, and that's our challenge, right? And some of these numbers, I mean, I've got some numbers here as well, and it's difficult to compare, apples and apples, because we just don't have much of a rental stock in Aurora. We have some, but based on the Toronto Area Real Estate Board, listings at the end of 2024, we had 8 one-bedroom apartments listing. So you're correct about the numbers, but the York Regional percentage is higher than ours at 175%. And the reason they've done that is, they consider that a higher threshold, a true reflection of the actual rates that are out there. And the baseline are the CMHC, rates that are used to form this data, because it takes into account some of the older existing housing stock that we have that's really not attainable because it's been, in long-term rental ship, quite frankly, and they're not available. So that's why they've come up with the 175% threshold, because this will be newer housing stock, different amenities compared to some of the older that may not be attainable because it's just in long-term, owner or rental ship. And so that's why the threshold is higher. But again, primary reason for the program is to really incentivize more rental housing stock.
Councillor?
And long term, that'll help us to sort of keep keep the pressure on prices down, a little lower, because right now we just don't have that inventory out there with respect to purpose-built rentals.
Councillor?
Thank you. And I did start off my comments by saying that, I do support the intent of this program, which is to, increase the supply of rental housing. But the methodology that the region's using, I think needs to be revisited or, perhaps, overhauled. And I guess I'll turn to you, Mr. Mayor, our regional representative, to perhaps have those conversations at the region level to say whether or not that justification or how they're determining what the one-bedroom rent is, has it been reviewed in a little while? Is it current? Is it not? Does it need to be revisited? It just seems strange that when you look at the market, the average rent is less than what the policy for York Region is, and perhaps it's time to revisit it.
Thank you, Councillor, and I would agree, and I will speak to regional staff as well as the chairman in regards to this. I think it's important that the numbers reflect what the current state is, but as Mr. Ramuno mentioned, I think policy was enabled to ensure that we receive more rental within purpose-built rentals within all 9 municipalities, because it was very much lacking. And so this was the incentive that they provided to encourage developers to move towards purpose-built rentals instead of condominium developments.
And I get that's the key objective. I just think some of the maybe the mechanics or the methodology within the policy needs to be revisited.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Rees?
Yes, thank you. And I agree with the 2 previous speakers on this in terms of the intent. But I wonder, and it's probably through you to Mr. Ramuno, it appears to me that the incentive and the amount of money that is being provided as an incentive is being spread over the entire development. And I know there's been some creative opportunities here. Is there a way that this developer can suggest 2 or 3 floors or a certain number of units that actually meet the threshold of the Affordable Housing Action Plan, which means 25 to 35%, because this is a major transit station area? Can you speak to them about creating some serious affordability with this deferral, rather than spreading it across all 900 of the units. Is that something that you think is possible through you, Mayor?
Mr. Romero?
So you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that, one of our objectives in our official plan and our housing action plan is to achieve a certain number of purpose-built rentals over the next 10 years. And it was 1,000 units over the life of the official plan and 500 units over the next 10 years. So this goes a long way in achieving that objective. I think the other thing to keep in mind is, if council approves the report before you, is really step one is that you're saying you agree to that these two applicants or developers maybe would be eligible to for that deferral program. The next step is, and we are working closely with the Metcalfe property, we're finalizing site plan approval where we do have that information that I relayed to Council Gardner with respect to the unit breakdown. At that point, they'll be sitting down with regional staff and town staff. They'll have to execute an agreement to ensure that they conform to the provisions of the program to ensure that if they enter into this 20-year agreement, that the number of those units that are going to be within that threshold will be secured at that rent over a 20-year period. And again, as our treasurer mentioned, part of the recommendation of the report is that those DCs will be payable on a yearly basis starting the first year over the 20 years.
Councillor.
I'm not sure I got the answer to my question, but I know it's a complicated one because we're in new territory here about purpose-built rentals, which are important and we want to have those. But when we're talking about using taxpayer money or money that belongs to the town to subsidize or incentivize the builder, and we have a number that says 25 or 35% of those units have to be at a certain threshold, can't we insist that they meet that threshold? It's not going to be a change it's just going to, that the other parts of the purpose-built rentals will likely be higher. So is there a way that you can speak to them about trying to achieve our 25, or I'd be happy with 25 right now, but 25% of those units that are legitimately at a price point that is considered affordable for the rentals? So through you to Mr. Romero.
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Romero.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's difficult to answer at this time. I mean, they have approvals for the projects from a zoning perspective, number of units. There are some smaller one-bedroom units and a certain percentage, I think I mentioned 8% that are studio, that are just over 400 square feet. So once they come to market, in next year, we may have a better idea as to if they are going to be rentals, if they take advantage of this program, what the monthly rent will be. And there may be a case that a percentage of those units could achieve our affordability threshold of the 25% or 35% within the MTSA. Just don't have those numbers now because we haven't gone to a stage where they have, they haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet. Mm-hmm. They're really at this point just they've expressed a desire to be part of the program with the region. And so we're trying to align with the region's policy. So moving closer to when we get to a final site plan stage and executing agreements when they go to the market, and it's a couple of years away. Because again, in this one case, they may be in a position to break ground later on this year or early 2026. Occupancy is probably 2 years away from when they break ground. So, and things do change with respect to rents as we have seen over the last couple of years, right? They've gone up over the last couple of years. There may be a slight decline, but we won't know until they actually go to market with respect to how many of those units will be under that our affordability threshold, Marc.
Councillor.
Well, again, we're being asked to approve something here, and then we're being told that we don't know what it'll result in. And I'd like to have some better understanding of what our intent is. Our intent is that we don't mind incentivizing, but we'd like to make sure that at least a portion of those are deemed as affordable housing in that particular area, because it's in our official plan and in our affordable housing action plan. So I'm torn about this. I'd like to hear what the others have to say, so I'll yield the floor to you, Mayor.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I'm also in support of the concept. I mean, we just went through a lengthy discussion about homelessness, and this is, you know, an attempt to provide housing that's affordable. My issue is balancing what the cost is to the community to achieve that. And I share the concern that $2,600 for a one-bedroom does not seem to me to be affordable. I know people in this community that are paying less, far less, for a one-bedroom in condominiums in this town. In addition to that, and if I understand it correctly through you, Mr. Mayor, page 6 of 8 or 171 of our agenda, it says staff have confirmed that a 20-year interest-free deferral with 20 equal annual payments starting at the end of the first year would be considered an equal incentive under this program. So we're trying to equal or better what the region is doing. Am I to understand that that means that on an annual basis, beginning at the end of the first year, that there will be a payment from the developer of $780,000? 15 million divided by 20, roughly.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for the town share of the development charges, it would be 1/20th of the total amount would be due each year. The regions would be fully deferred for 20 years.
Councillor.
Sorry, what is the amount that they would be paying? Is it the 15 million divided by the 20 years on an annual basis? But that's owing to the town, and by the end of the 20 years, they would have paid it all back.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the amounts that's shown in the report are the amounts of development charges that are estimated that would be owed to the town. There's also development charges that would also be owed to the province and the region. The provinces still have to be paid up front, and then the regions would be a full 20-year deferral under a separate agreement with them.
But ours, through you, Mr. Mayor, is the 15 plus million. That would be divided by 20, and on an annual basis, they would be paying some $780,000. So, I don't think we captured that when in the $12 million loss, unless I'm mistaken. And I say $12 million as if it's nothing. It's a significant loss to a revenue source that we would have if we don't do this, and the development obviously proceeds. We have to find other ways to fund that deficit. Is the calculation 15 million over 20 years, the loss of 6.2% minus the 780,000 on an annual basis? Through Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through Mr. Mayor, so currently under the DC policy for when we have deferred development charges, which there are deferrals now up to 5 years, I believe any of the 20-year deferrals got changed through some of the changes to regulations. The rate that's charged, we follow the same region's policy rate, which is a 6.2%. Now, it's not that we're actually losing the funds, because if we don't go with offering an interest-free deferral, then they may just not go ahead with it at all anyways. That just is provided for an example of how much it could be if like interest was paid over that period of time, if we wanted to give like an interest-bearing deferral as an option.
Councillor.
Yes, I mean, obviously we would have to have a baseline of this project moves forward. And on the one hand, it moves forward as a condominium. They pay full DCs, which are $15 million. In this scenario, we're interest-free for 20 years. They pay 1/20th per year, bringing down that debt. And there's a calculation that we would do. I'm not exactly sure what that is. I did my rough estimates, but I'm not sure they're accurate. They're not part of the report to get a sense of the true deficit. In addition to that, if we were to need to use that money, if we required that money and we didn't have it, we would have to go out and debt finance or find other ways of doing that. Clearly, as we've been debt financing all kinds of things, we get a very significant or a very good rate on return. But we also have to calculate that into the loss, because that would be an expense that we would incur if we went down this path, in addition to the losses of interest that we would not gain as a result of this path. That picture still isn't clear to me. The report says 12 million. Even if I was to rely on 12 million, that seems like a big amount to overcome in our DCs in order to accomplish this. I can't support this the way it is in front of me right now. As much as I want to move forward with purpose-built rental, the math doesn't make sense to me. I can certainly see this making sense for a Vaughan, for a Markham, maybe even a Newmarket, much bigger municipalities that have much bigger reserves, their DCs, they can absorb this kind of a hit. The town of Aurora, $12 million hit over 20 years. I don't even know how we would accomplish that. So as it stands today, I won't be able to support this unless anyone has something that I've missed and can convince me otherwise.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I'm glad we had the opportunity to speak about this again, and we received that additional information about the cost of the taxpayers. Thank you, Councillor Gardner, for pointing out this information. $12 million is a lot. I am in support of supporting rental housing units, MTSA, and I was not under the impression that we were talking about 440 square foot, 1-bedroom condos. Myself, I have a child whose daughter is in Yonge and Eglinton as well, who's in a 1-bedroom, much larger than 440 square feet at Yonge and Eglinton, paying less than that. And I was under the impression that this was serving up to perhaps a larger space for maybe a family starting out, which would be a lot less than a mortgage payment. That's for sure. Through Mr. Mayor to Mr. Ramuno, I mean, what would really happen if we just said no?
Toronto.
Through Mr. Mayor, so these two developers have expressed the interest because their intention is to build rentals. So if council says no, I don't believe they will have access to the regional program, because the region's made it clear that the local municipality has to have the similar program. So they may or may not proceed with the developments. So, I mean, just keep that in mind. And that $15 million of potential future development charges, we'll only realize that if, both of these buildings, we issue permits on both buildings at one time, 600 units each approximately. That's when we do get the development charges, right? If both buildings were to come in at a future date, issue building permits, where we issue building permits, that's when we collect our development charges. So I know they're interested in the program, and they're both interested in building purpose-built rentals. They're not interested in building, market condominium buildings. So.
Councillor.
Thank you. Do we as Aurora Council have any jurisdiction at all to put in our own conditions for that number to be a lot less than a 2,600 is being presented today? Do we have that authority?
Wainwright Fincas.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would depend on the agreement that the town would have with the developer. The region's policy does have some leeway, but it's the average rents overall have to be at that 175%. So we'd have to have conversations with the developer, but then that would mean some may come under that 175, closer to our 125, but then some other units are going to be much more expensive to make up for that.
Councillor.
Thank you. So would there be a solution if, depending on how council feels around here, if we were to refer that back to staff, to have those conversations with the developer to suggest, hey, this could be a condition that of the agreement, that the affordable cost, that threshold is lower, to offer that before we decide we want to agree to this?
Through
Mr. Mayor, we can certainly have those discussions and report back.
Councillor.
Thank you. I will defer to my colleagues to chime in, but that would be my recommendation to refer back to staff.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you. You know, we've talked about affordable housing for a long time. We talked about bonusing 25, 30%, you know, figures, and nothing's really been done about it. I agree with everyone here in terms of the 2,600 rental figure. It does seem high, but what seems clear to me is that if we want affordable housing, looks like there's going to be a cost, and it's hopefully it's a partnership with the developer as well as the municipality, but it's going to be a cost. And when we have to make that decision, you know, we have to ask ourselves, you know, if it's the cost is down to our OP's rent figure of 1889, is that going to be in our mind? Is that going to be a good enough figure for us to go ahead and absorb the cost? So I think if staff does go back to the region and the developer to see if this number, the region's number can get lower, or the region's number can get lower, we have to think to ourselves, you know, what is that number that we're looking for? Our OP says 1889. So at a minimum, you know, are we going to be in agreement with 1889? That's not cheap, but that's what our OP says. Affordable housing is probably the biggest issue, you know, in the whole country, beyond all the items that we talked about recently. So there's a cost to everything, and so we're going to have to be willing to, you know, absorb that. So I'm not willing to approve this in its current form, but if we want to amend this to ask the region to go see what that lower figure might be, then maybe we can have that discussion again.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, second time.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Muno or perhaps Mr. Serio. Is this something that we could put a sunset clause on, whereby that the developer needs to take action sooner rather than later and actually build and construct the building within this time frame, or lose the deferral?
Mr. Muno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe so. I mean, they both have a sunset clause tied to their zoning bylaw that council approved last year or 2 years ago. Something we can, you know, certainly have that discussion with them as well moving forward.
Councillor.
Thank you. You know, because I think, you know, part of the benefit of doing this is you want to see this housing, rental housing come online soon. We've seen issues in the past where, you know, people get development rights or, you know, certain things, and yet they still don't build. And so we need to see some action in that sense. So that's something that I'd like to get clarity around. It also may be a way to, I guess, blunt some of the financial impact of it. If we believe, and we don't know for certainty, that this is necessary for them to move forward, then this kind of program could get them to build sooner, which would mean property tax dollars for us sooner, which would help offset some of those losses of revenues as well. But it's hard to crystal ball it to know whether or not this is the domino that would spur them to build it or not.
Yep. Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very glad that Councillor Kim raised the figure that we have in our official plan. And under the DC, I guess the DC bylaw, it's even lower. This would be 1,150 apartments that we would be subsidizing. Little more than the number we have in our affordable housing action plan. I'd much rather subsidize something that was really affordable according to our action plan than this. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Muno, does it have somewhere in provincial policy that there has to be affordable housing by a major transit station?
Mr. Muno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that policy has been in place, well, townwide from the province, the 25% number. And with our new official plan and all MTSAs, it's 35% affordable. But again, we don't really have the financial tools that we've heard from a number of developers with the rising costs. It's difficult to achieve those numbers, but we do have that number in our official plan.
No, sir.
Thank you. And I remember when the consultant was here, he said that that's where the affordable housing should be concentrated because of the transit. Yeah, but it's up to the developer to do that. And as you said, it's difficult. I don't think this is to the advantage of the taxpayers or any future residents to Aurora, so I will have to vote against it. But through Mr. Mayor, one point of clarification. These units have to conform to the minimums in the building code.
No.
It says that somewhere in the report that these have to conform to the building code.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We don't have building permits yet, but once building permits are submitted, they'll be reviewed under the Ontario Building Code.
Councillor.
Thank you. So I just like to say that the minimums in the building code are much lower than the minimums that we have in our Aurora bylaws. And so conceivably a developer could conform to the building code and have even smaller apartments offered at this rent. That's very concerning to me. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions on this one? For a call a vote. Councillor Gillen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to put an amendment to refer back to staff.
Okay, yeah, I'll come back.
Okay.
No problem. I agree. I mean, the numbers aren't the greatest. And I think that it would be appropriate to refer it back, and let's see if we can get some better numbers and work with the developers and see if there's some adjustments we can make to the policy that are specific that makes sense for us here in the town of Aurora. That being said, just to let everyone know, this is not something that is just for the bigger municipalities. Newmarket just recently did this and enacted this policy to have purpose-built rentals in their community. We talk about it. We need to ensure, and I've stated this before, if we expect to have true affordable housing, it's going to take intervention from all levels of government, and we got to put taxpayer dollars into it, because this is a market-driven economy, and the residential properties that are being developed are going to be at market rates unless the government subsidizes it. Now, that's why I said that we need to look at how we can ensure that we're getting value for the dollars that we're putting in, and we're being able to provide the affordable housing that is necessary in our community. But affordable housing isn't just about just creating the level of the number of what that house pricing is. It's also about creating a diverse housing stock that allows for opportunities for many people to break into the market, into our community. Purpose-built rentals being one of those opportunities to get into here, to be able to live in our town. And so I think it's very important for us to do what we can to work on this, to try to get something that we can move forward with. I mean, we look at the provincial government and the federal government, they eliminated the HST on purpose-built rentals. So they put tax dollars in to, will stop taking it to ensure that from the developers that ended up getting charged to the ultimate resident to provide more affordability or allow for the financials to make sense for people to be moving forward with purpose-built rentals. It is a type of development that we don't have much of in our town. And I think we need to do what we can to work towards providing that purpose-built rental in our community. So I look forward to the referral back to staff and working with the developers to see if we can get numbers that make more sense and that bring value to our residents and provide that diverse housing stock. Councillor, referral? Seconder? Councillor Kim, thank you. Call. All right. Councillor Gardner? Councillor Gardner's yes. Councillor Weiss is yes. That carries. New business. Councillor Weiss. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you. It's really, it's not new business, more a public service announcement, but I believe on March the 3rd, we're having a town hall with York Regional Police here.
Correct.
Is it from 7 to 9?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there because we won't have that opportunity at committee of the whole. It'll already be done by then. So it's a crime prevention, and it's a very great session to engage with the community, with York Regional Police, with a presentation. I was just at our local district today, speaking with the superintendent about this and about obviously the safety and the concerns in the community. And this is a great opportunity for the community to get together here at Town Hall in the chambers. I believe Councillor Weiss, you were the one who had started this and headed this up. So thank you very much for organizing this, and Mayor Marcus for supporting the initiative. And hopefully the community will come on out and learn a lot of great stuff. Thanks.
Councillor Gillen, just want to make sure, did you say before committee of the whole? It's on Monday, yes.
It's on Monday.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to make sure, just in case it wasn't clear. So
I'm so sorry.
It's Monday the 3rd, right?
Yeah.
7 to 9, which is on Monday, the day before committee of the whole,
Yes.
just so everyone had. Okay, thank you. Councillor Gardner, new business? No? Councillor Thompson, new business? Councillor Gallo, new business? Councillor Kim, new business? Thank you. Bylaws. Someone like to move the bylaws? Councillor Thompson, seconder. Councillor Gillen. Councillor Gallo, did you have something on the bylaws?
I did just it's I think it's the last one. Let me just see. It's the procurement policy.
Yep.
I believe when it was at committee of the whole that we were trying to get a definition or a better definition of acting in good faith of trade treaties. And I wonder if that's going to be kind of a separate document where staff will be judging if someone is acting in good faith, or is that definition there strong enough?
It was during the special council meeting, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Wainwright, I think this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So in the acting in good faith, we said the respective country is honoring the terms of their trade treaty. And we also added into there not applying any additional tariffs. And this would also be determined in discretion of the Procurement Governance Committee, which would basically be the ELT team. And we will look at within our internal procedures and protocols, providing more expansive definition and working with the leadership team in defining that more clearly for the purpose of applying the policy.
Councillor Gallo.
Okay, so we don't need to necessarily do that in this document. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Call a vote. Councillor Gardner? Councillor Gardner's yes. Well, that carries. Confirming bylaw. Councillor Weiss, Councillor Gardner, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Before I call for adjournment, I just want to say thank you, council, for approving the procurement, beefed up procurement bylaw to ensure that we add more, I guess, preference to Canada First and Made in Canada products. So thank you for that. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.